When I was in high school philosophy class, my teacher told me that Plato and the ancient Greeks saw our passions as wild horses. If we do not control them, they are wild and dangerous, but if we learn to harness them, they are powerful and useful. I personally think of my passions like wallabies. If kangaroos are compared to be a horse, the wallaby is a pony. Kangaroos are large, powerful, charismatic, and elegant. A wallaby is small, spunky, and personable. I could find you a wallaby in almost every zoo in the United States, but very few people know about this little marsupial. I consider the wallaby to be an animal to have a major connection with. It is one of the few animals I have seen born and watched grow from a little joey to a full-grown adult. It is one of the few animals that has died in my hands as I was trying to give it life-saving medication. It is one of the few animals I have made a solo cross-country trip transporting. I am the main caretaker of my current wallaby herd. My passions are wallabies, spunky, explosive, and wild. And in turn, I'm passionate about wallabies and all the creatures in my care. Above all else, I identify as a caretaker. From a young age, I've always been fascinated by animals. I really owe it to my parents for fostering my interest in wildlife. I know a lot of people who would snuff it out quickly, so hopefully their kids would become a doctor or a lawyer. From an extremely young age, I developed my interests. My first words were bark bark, which I memorized from a picture book my mom would read me. I was drawn to all things animals, so my parents took me to zoos. That was really where I started to develop my passion. With my family living in all parts of the country, I was treated to world-class facilities, like the Bronx Zoo, the National Zoo, and the St. Louis Zoo. I would also collect animal toys from the gift shop and line them up all over the house. My mother, having a degree in child psychology, wanted to foster my love and introduce me to Jeff Corwin, the Kratt Brothers, and Steve Irwin. I absolutely loved watching these shows. My father, a computer engineer, did not know much about animals but still wanted to encourage my passions. He fondly tells me about sitting on his lap playing computer games like Zoo Tycoon as I directed him to make animal enclosures in the game.
I wanna be a zookeeper because I like animals.
In freshman year of high school, I volunteered like a madman. I had sent in an application to my local zoo, but being 15, they said I needed to be older with more experience to be a zookeeper. Disappointed, I decided that summer to build my resume. With my recently retired grandfather, I was able to volunteer for UNH Cooperative Extension, the New Hampshire Audubon Society, New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, and the Squam Lake Science Center, educating the public on wildlife and participating in citizen science projects. I was determined to be a zookeeper. The next summer, I sent in my application and got an interview. Audra, my current boss and good friend, was very impressed with someone so young that had so much experience and drive. I was put on the aviary, caring for game birds, peacocks, parakeets, and cranes. I was quickly developing an eye for animal husbandry, learning as much as I could. I would often have hour-long discussions with the director and head zookeepers about why birds made certain noises or why they did this dance in front of their mate versus that. I learned the baseline behaviors of animals and how they saw the world and how they interacted with it. I was asked to come back next summer, where I was promoted to care for more difficult species. This was extremely exciting to me. I got to care for animals like coati, sloth, monkeys, lemurs, porcupines, parrots, lynx, servals, owls, and deer. I don't think I stopped smiling that entire summer. They asked me to stay part-time for the winter, and on Saturdays I would leave my hectic academic life behind and go relax with my favorite animals. During senior year, I took a stab at wildlife rehabilitation, caring for injured birds, squirrels, chipmunks, possums, and porcupines at Center for Wildlife. Here, I developed an eye for wildlife medicine. At the zoo, animals would rarely get sick, but here, every day the saddest cases would come in. Animals struck by cars, mauled by dogs, shot, everything. Not only did I develop my ability to care for these animals, but I learned a lot about empathy. Here, I was putting my 110% into something that couldn't even say thank you. And the goal was not even for me and the animal to have a relationship. They were supposed to go back out to the wild. I don't think many people understand the amount of empathy it takes to put so much into something, and the only thing you can get out of it is satisfaction that the animal will be okay. These creatures aren't cats and dogs. Every fiber of their being tells them to stay away from you. So the only thing you'll ever get is a bite on the hand. After Center for Wildlife, I would go on to make 2 separate trips to do wildlife rescue in Costa Rica, where I became the surrogate father to a baby howler monkey. When he first came in, he had been a victim of a wildfire and had no mother in sight. He was so small I wasn't sure he was going to survive the night, but I cared for him like he was my own little son. I would get up at the crack of dawn and during the night to check on him and give him bottles. I would hold him and groom him like his mother would. He caught pneumonia twice, and I would give him around-the-clock care and medicine. I was afraid always that I would wake up and he'd be gone. He was just so fragile. This little life was so helpless like a newborn baby, and my paternal instincts just took over. All while knowing eventually I would have to give him up to the wild jungles of Costa Rica. But I knew that was what was best for him, to be out in the wild with his own kind. I do wish the same for all the animals that are in human care, but the reality is that most of them would not survive the deforestation, poachers, or predators. There's just no wild left for most of them to go back to. But for my little monkey, he was able to be released into a protected area with a troop of howler monkeys that would keep him safe once I was gone. One of the hardest things I was ever able to do was to release that little animal, but now he's free in the rainforest where he belongs. When I look back on it, I've had an incredible career at just the age of 21. Of course, I cannot take all the credit. I've had many people throughout the years constantly helping me and pushing me towards success. They helped me, and in turn, I've been able to help the animals. Empathy is such an important lesson from all my hours spent with wildlife. Empathy is something that is developed over the years of helping those in need, and some are more inclined to it than others. Those with massive hearts often go on to help those who cannot speak for themselves, like children, the elderly, mentally disabled, and of course animals. Empathy is vital for making sure that you can understand why a monkey or an owl is feeling a certain way. Put yourself in their shoes, with their needs. To them, a new colored shirt is frightening, to them a leaf is delicious, and to them the sun's warm glow is immaculate. It is important to understand how they feel and not to project your own emotions on them. They simply don't think like us. Their sense of past and future is almost non-existent. They are reactionary and detail-oriented. In order to be a good caretaker, you must be a good empath and understand these things. The same can be said about interacting with people. It is important to understand the worlds of other people that can be vastly different than your own. Here I am in this video with the Wallabies, caring for creatures who cannot speak, but I can still listen. We can only communicate in a way that takes a huge amount of listening, understanding, and commitment. It is a language of body and energy that can only be learned by harnessing your wild horse passions and using them for the good of others.